How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 3.
Greetings, conversationalists. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States of America. Delighted to have you with me. The phone number, 877-973-7425. If you text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777, you get the live stream, the show notes, the podcast, and a whole lot more. Want to turn to a cultural subject now, and I want to go back to Dr. Paul McHugh. If you will remember, Dr. Paul McHugh had been a doctor at Johns Hopkins University. He was a University Distinguished Service Professor at the School of Medicine. He was the director of the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences and psychiatrist in chief at Johns Hopkins from 1975 to 2001. He was vilified by the left for his opposition to gender transitions. He had written numerous times warning about fads like recovered memory fads and psychotherapy. He was one of the leading researchers that debunked it. And he was sounding similar alarms about transgenderism. And in fact, the Department of Psychiatry at Johns Hopkins decided to stop gender transitions. And it was the surgeons who were making a lot of money who brought it back. In 2021, he gave an interview in the public discourse. And let me read you his quote. "I can tell you exactly how lawsuits are going to play out. You know that person is going to wake up at age 25 and realize she's got a 5 o'clock shadow, she's had various mutilations to her body, she's infertile, and she's going to say, 'How did you let this happen?' And then parents are going to say, 'Well, the doctor said.' So they're going to say, 'Let's sue the doctors.' They're going to go to the doctors and say, 'What did you do this for?' And they'll say, 'That was a standard treatment for transgenderism.' And the person is going to say, 'But you see, I wasn't transgendered. I was a child.' And they're going to say, 'Holy smokes, you're right. We can't tell who's transgendered in truth.' And then the insurance companies are going to bail out. And a lot of people are going to be injured in reputation. But we're going to be left with a number of much more injured patients. I'm very sure that's going to happen." Now, progressives will tell you that only about 1% of people who transition ever detransition. There's new data on this. In a survey of people who have detransitioned, over 95% of them never reported their detransition. They just stopped the hormones. They did not trust any longer the people who urged their transition. So they just gave up. And now there's a big deal in New York. The Free Press has the story. Fox Varian had a turbulent childhood. Her parents split when she was 7, triggering a 3-year custody battle that saw her estranged from her father. She suffered from a constellation of mental health problems, including depression, anxiety, and social phobia. She was diagnosed with autism and bounced around various schools. Her first periods sent her into a meltdown, and she battled disordered eating and body image issues. By mid-adolescence, she was completely lost. At 15, she began questioning her gender during sessions with her psychologist. She changed her birth name, Isabella, to Gabriel, which she saw as androgynous. Over the next 2 months, she cut her hair short, began binding her breasts, switched her name again to Rowan, and started telling people she was transgender. In December 2019, 11 months after she started this public social transition, Varian underwent surgery to remove her breasts. She was 16 years old. At 18, she adopted the name Fox. She is now 22 and is one of thousands of minors who underwent gender transition surgery over the past decade. She is just one of the young people who have come to regret permanently addressing what was only a temporary identity shift. 3 years after her mastectomy, Varian stopped identifying as transgender and began a process known as detransitioning. In May 2023, she filed medical malpractice suits against the two principal Westchester County, New York care providers who oversaw her gender transition. Her longtime psychologist, Kenneth Einhorn, and Dr. Simon Chin, who performed the mastectomy. On Friday, a jury in White Plains, New York, awarded Varian $2 million in damages. Her case is the first malpractice case from a detransitioner to go before a jury, and I was the only reporter to attend the entire 3-week trial. Represented by personal injury attorney Adam Deutsch, Varian said she had been injured by the defendants due to their deviation from standard practices and a lack of informed consent. While there are no guarantees in medical malpractice lawsuits, legal experts believe Varian's victory could inspire a wave of similar cases that would significantly disrupt pediatric gender medicine. The trial was anchored by emotional testimony from Varian and her mother, Claire Deacon. Varian testified that Einhorn served as an enabler, repeatedly assuring her that the mastectomy she desired would greatly improve her well-being. Her mom, Ms. Deacon, testified that Einhorn browbeat her into consenting to her daughter's surgery, threatening that she would otherwise commit suicide. And yet Varian said that she regretted the surgery immediately after removing the bandages. Deacon recalls she was still anxious, she was still depressed, she had all the same issues, some of which even worsened. After the mastectomy, Varian began to cut herself. Shame and cognitive dissonance, Varian testified, kept her from openly confessing her remorse until 3 years following the mastectomy. At 19, she stopped identifying and presenting as male and has since considered herself a woman, but now an incomplete one. It's so hard to face that you are disfigured for life, Varian told the jury. The physical toll, she testified, includes scarring, lack of sensation in her nipples, and nerve pain where her breasts once were. She will never be able to nurse an infant. No amount of reconstruction is ever going to bring back what I lost. There are now 30 civil suits filed by detransitioners. Almost all of them malpractice cases structured similar to Varian's. A number have faced dismissals after running into strict statutes of limitations. Most of those will be appealed. It remains to be seen whether Varian will face an appeal. For now, none of the attorneys involved in the case would comment. But one lawyer says it's a shot across the bow to all the doctors and malpractice insurance carriers that the financial risks and the risks to the doctors' careers and reputations are real and substantial, says Charles Lamandry, a California firm that's filed suits for detransitioners, including Chloe Cole in her suit against healthcare provider Kaiser Permanente over puberty blockers, testosterone, and the mastectomy she received as a teenager. What's interesting to me are a couple of things in all of this. One is that a number of states have already banned gender transitions for minors. Donald Trump as well is starting to pull Medicaid funding for hospitals that provide treatments for minors. There is a dividing line, and I don't think it's a good dividing line, but it is a dividing line between adults and kids. And there's this belief that as an adult, you should be able to do whatever you want to do to your body. I disagree. I don't think people should be able to commit suicide or we should have euthanasia. I don't think people should be able to mutilate themselves. There are people suffering from mental health issues, and we should not encourage or permit their self-harm. I don't think we should allow homeless people to freeze to death outside, but progressives these days take a you do you, you live your best life now, and if you want to stay outside when it's -5 degrees and die, well, there's one less homeless person for us to have to worry about. They take this radicalized position on individuality and individual. They blast the rugged individualism of the United States, but when it comes to stuff like this, we're all rugged individualists now. Go chop off your breast, child. It's insane to me that we've allowed it to get this far, but now we have a number of people detransitioning, and yet the spin continues to be that there are hardly any of them, less than 1%, except now we know that over 95% of those who detransition never report their detransitioning. They just stop taking the hormones. In fact, Varian is one of those people who didn't report into a medical community to say, I'm detransitioning. She just stopped. In the case, her lawyer argued that her psychiatrist and surgeon, quote, horrifically failed at meeting standards of care to protect a fragile and vulnerable kid, and said they engaged in callous and careless and lackadaisical conduct. In fact, Einhorn wrote a 3-paragraph referral letter to the plastic surgeon 9 months after Varian began publicly presenting as transgender. Chin met with Varian for just 2 30-minute appointments during the 9 weeks leading up to the operation. There was a woman, and at some point I need to find the clip again, and I don't have it, but there was a woman, British lady, who said that a lot of the people who have embraced the transgender moment, they're going to be like the Japanese fighting on the islands long after World War II ended, unconvinced that the empire had fallen. Parents who got their kids psychiatrists who convinced them to go through hysterectomies and mastectomies or castrations or building female reproductive canals and boys, all the painful, awful stuff that has happened. They're not going to be able to admit that they were wrong. They're not going to be able to admit what they did was ultimately cruel or ineffective. But as more people who detransition continue to win in court, now this is the beginning, not the end. This is the beginning of the lawsuits making it to court, because this is a new issue. They've just started. We're going to see fewer doctors be willing to go down this road for youth. And that's a good thing. The psychologist began treating this girl, Varian, weekly for complex psychological problems. He didn't have formal training in transgender care. He didn't seem to know what he was doing, according to the lawyer in court. He referred Varian for surgery with no mention of gender dysphoria. This was a horrible tragedy. And this young lady will never be made whole. Money will not restore what she was. I'm gobsmacked that this has gotten this far in this country, and it is overwhelmingly white progressive women who have embraced this cause. And more often than not, it is young men who are transitioning to become women. It's not as often young women becoming men. It's moms who have issues with men who convince their young sons that they're actually girls and try to get them to transition. And the fact that now the medical community is starting to lose this fight is actually a good sign that the fight can be won against this mental illness that has spread through Western society, where even the Europeans now ahead of us on this are like, yeah, we need to slow roll this train. This doesn't actually seem to corroborate with the science. And yet in this country, the media never even showed up for this trial. Why cover something like this if you have completely gone in on the indoctrination? One reporter did, And it is a tragic, tragic tale that I suspect has happened way too much. And we're going to see a lot more of these lawsuits, and that's a good thing. I'm going to play you some audio, and it is in Spanish. It is from Irene Montero, who is the leader of the Communist Party of Spain. Listen to this, and then I'll tell you what she's saying.
Quiero pedirles a las personas migrantes y racializadas que por favor no nos dejen solas con tanto facha. Y claro que sí queremos que voten, claro que sí. Hemos conseguido papeles, regularización ya, y ahora vamos a por la nacionalidad o a cambiar la ley para que puedan votar, por supuesto. Ojalá, teoría del reemplazo, ojalá podamos barrer de fachas y de racistas este país con gente migrante, con gente trabajadora. Claro que yo quiero que haya reemplazo, reemplazo de fachas, reemplazo de racistas, reemplazo de vividores, y que lo podamos hacer con la gente trabajadora de este país, tenga el color de la piel que tenga, sea china, negra, marrona, con todas compañeras las gentes trabajadoras de este país.
Those of you who speak Spanish, your mind is being blown right now. This is the leader of the Communist Party of Spain, and what she is saying is that Pedro Sanchez, Spain's prime minister, has given amnesty to 500,000 illegal aliens, and she says, quote, I want to ask migrants and radicalized people to please not leave us alone with so many fascists. And yes, of course, we want them to vote, of course. We've obtained papers for you, regularization, which is amnesty, and now we're going to demand that you be given citizenship so that you can vote, or we'll change the law so that you'll be able to vote. Yes, hopefully we'll have replacement theory. Hopefully we'll be able to swap away from this country all these fascists and racist people with immigrants and working people. Yes, of course, I want replacement. I want the replacement of fascists, replacement of racist people, replacement of freeloaders, and that we'll be able to accomplish it with the working people of this country, no matter the color of skin, be her Chinese, be her black or brown. This woman wants to replace conservative Spaniards who she believes are racists and fascists by flooding the country with illegal aliens, giving them amnesty, and then making them citizens so that they can vote for the communists. She's being open about it. I've played you the audio. I've read you the translation. Those of you who speak Spanish know I'm not making it up. That's where the left is headed in this country, too, because as there's population decline in blue states, they need illegal aliens to pad the population. I'm just stunned by how brazen so many of them are. Y'all, by the way, Incogni is who I have been using. I've gotten a lot of questions about this from people. Incogni is I-N-C-O-G-N-I. I-N-C-O-G-N-I. Incogni. I-N-C-O-G-N-I. If you go to incogni.com/Eric, you can get 60% off. They go behind the scenes on the internet and get the data broker sites to wipe out your information, to minimize the spam callers who get your phone numbers, the data brokers who sell your information, the insurance agents who use the information to jack up your rates. They wipe it out. They're very, very good at it. I started using them after getting doxxed. I was like, I need somebody to get on here and wipe this information out, and they do that. Incogni.com/Eric is where you need to go. They do a very good job of wiping your personal information off the web, where it's there about you and your family. They make sure it gets taken down behind the scenes. Incogni.com/Eric. Incogni.com/Eric. Get 60% off following that link. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. So my kid came by the office and brought me coffee. She's sitting in my office next to the studio, and I've been talking to her, and I guess she couldn't hear me when I've been talking the whole time to an empty room. She left and didn't tell me. Ah, well. Now, if you're just tuning in, I assume you've been here all 3 hours. Before we went to break, I played a clip of the leader of the Spanish Communist Party speaking in Spanish, but what she was saying is that she wants all of the illegal aliens of Spain to not only have amnesty, which the socialist prime minister is giving them, but also she wants them to have citizenship so they can vote, and she wants the law changed to make it happen, because she wants to flood the country with illegal aliens who become citizens to vote away the racists, the fascists, essentially anyone she doesn't like, who she's labeling racist and fascist. They are conservative Spanish voters who don't support illegal immigration. This is becoming a radicalized issue in Europe, and a lot of the supposedly far-right groups aren't really far-right. They're just opposed to illegal immigration, and they've been labeled by the elite in Europe as far-right, and in the process, the European elite are trying to replace them with illegal aliens. Many of the illegal aliens in the continental European nations come from the Middle East and North Africa. They refuse to assimilate. There's actually a clip circulating, I didn't save it, of a woman in Great Britain who's saying they're trying to boost the number of non-white people in the Cotswolds, which is that picturesque area of Great Britain with the little cottages and the rolling hills and the like, and they're trying to bring in more non-white people. And this woman was saying one of the things they're going to have to do is regulate ownership of dogs, because the white British like their dogs and Muslims don't like dogs, and there's so many people in the Cotswolds who let their dogs roam free. You're going to have to regulate the dogs in order to bring in the Muslims, and she thinks that's a necessary good thing. Then the national parks, people let their dogs off leashes, and Muslims don't like dogs, and you're going to have to get the native Britons to curb their dog ownership. The progressive elite in the UK and the rest of Europe would much prefer illegal immigrants who refuse to culturally assimilate than they would the native people who aren't fans of immigration. Kind of wild to see. In this country, I want to play you some audio. This is Harry Hinton, the data expert on CNN.
Today, I wanted to take a look at some long-term population trends that really should set off a flashing red siren to Democrats nationwide while bringing a big smile to the faces of Republicans nationwide. Why do I say that? Because take a look at the big population gainers versus the last census back in 2020. According to the latest population estimates that take into account the population mid-2025, look at this. The biggest population growth this decade? All 5 of the states that Donald John Trump won in 2024. Texas, Florida, North Carolina, Georgia, and, of course, the great state of Arizona, where I spent my New Year's Eve. I love those folks out in Prescott, Arizona. These were the biggest gainers in terms of population compared to the 2020 census. Now, it's not just a red state boom. This is what we're looking at. We're looking at a red state boom here. But it is not just a red state boom. We're also looking at what I would dare call a blue state depression. Because who are the people? Who and where are the people moving from into the red states? Well, they're blue states. They're blue states. Take a look here. The lowest domestic net migration this decade. All 5 of the states that were won by Kamala Harris in 2024. Look at this. California, Harris's home state. New York, where I'm coming from right now, of course. Illinois, New Jersey, and, of course, the great Commonwealth of Massachusetts, which is a bastion of blue liberalism. These are the states that folks in the United States are moving away from and into the red states, which is propelling a red state boom. Now, this is interesting, right? But it could also have major political ramifications if it holds for 2030, the next census. Because take a look here. If, in fact, the 2025 population shifts hold for the 2030 census, look at this. Look at the House seat shifts by state. Remember, of course, we apportion the number of House seats depending on the population in each state. If, in fact, the 2025 population shifts hold for 2030, states that Kamala Harris won, they would lose 7 seats in the United States House of Representatives. The states that Donald Trump won in 2024, they would gain 7 seats. Now, this isn't just about the House of Representatives, right? It's also about the Electoral College, because the number of electoral votes that each state gets is equal to the number of senators. Each state, of course, has 2, plus the number of House seats that they have. So what would this mean for the House of Representatives? Well, if you remember back in 2024, right, it was all about, we were talking about the blue wall. If Kamala Harris could win the baseline Democratic states and then add in the blue wall states of Michigan, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, she would get to 270 electoral votes. But if all of a sudden we, in fact, have applying the 2025 estimates, the population estimates, to the Electoral College, the blue states plus the blue wall of Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin would no longer be enough. Under the current estimates, you get to exactly 270 electoral votes, the minimum needed to win the Electoral College. If, in fact, you apply the 2025 estimates, look at that. You would only get to 263.
There you go. This is why the Democrats in blue states are propping up illegal aliens in those states. Because under the United States Census, illegal aliens who reside in a state are counted under the census. It's the residents of states who are counted. The U.S. Census, Article 1, Section 2, authorizes the Congress to carry out the census in such manner as the laws direct. As early as 1870, the Supreme Court characterized as unquestionable the power of Congress to require both an enumeration and a collection of statistics. And courts have ruled that the head count of the population does not prohibit the gathering of other statistics. The census doesn't violate the Fourth Amendment. The census is constitutional, and the census counts everybody. Whether you want it to be counted or not, the census counts every American and non-American who lives in a state. Let's just get you Article 1, Section 2. In Article 1, Section 2, the enumeration, which is the census, shall be made within 3 years of the first meeting of the Congress of the United States, and within every subsequent term of 10 years in such manner as they shall law be directed. The number of representatives shall not exceed one for every 30,000, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The reality is that the census counts everybody. It's a head count of the total population. And the result is that the Democrats understand that the census can be used with illegal aliens to prop up the number of people. Representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states which may be included within the Union according to their respective numbers, which shall be determined by adding the whole number of free persons. The whole number of free persons. As a result, it doesn't say citizens, persons in the Constitution, Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3. So the higher the number of illegal immigrants in a state like Minnesota, which is losing population, the more likely they can stave off losing seats in the United States Senate. Or in the United States House, I'm sorry. And as a result, in the Electoral College. That's what's going on here. They have brainwashed themselves into thinking this is about caring for their neighbors and this is love of their neighbors who are illegal aliens. But it's really not about that. At the heart of this, the people who are in the positions of power within the progressive movement are very much like this Spanish lady. They want to replace Americans with illegal aliens and then hopefully over time give them the right to vote to shut out conservatives. Because they think the illegal aliens will vote for the left. This is, by the way, why so many Hispanic voters have shifted to the right, because Hispanic voters in this country came here legally, and as a result of coming here legally, they don't want to hand power over to a bunch of illegal aliens. That's why they're shifting to the right. And the left needs illegal aliens. They manufactured a crisis. They don't want it to go to waste. They manufactured the crisis of flooding the country, flooding the border. Now there are so many here. They're like, we can never get rid of them. It's too complicated. Who among us should deport our neighbors? We love them. There's no one illegal on stolen land. This is why, what Harry Hinton is getting to, the population decline in blue states. The blue states are going to get wiped out in the 2030 census. They're not going to be able to pad the margins. Texas looks like it could get 4 seats after the next census, given its population growth. Those will be Republican seats if the GOP doesn't screw things up. Never underestimate the ability of the GOP to screw stuff up, people. But that's what's going on here. That's why it's such a big deal. That's why the Democrats are playing for keeps. That's why the Democrats are hiding illegal aliens in their attics like they're Anne Frank. That's why in a place like Minnesota, you have these mass protests against illegal immigration deportations, but you don't see the same sorts of protests in other places. You don't see the same level of protests in a state like Georgia or Florida. You don't even really see it in Colorado or even in Maine, where we've sent ICE agents and Border Patrol agents to Maine. You're not seeing it. But in a place like Minnesota, where the progressives are entrenched in power, they are afraid that their base of power is going. And this is another reason why in places like San Francisco and elsewhere, they're trying to allow non-citizens to vote in local elections to pad their power there. They can at the federal races. You got to be a citizen. And they are determined that in these local races, you should be allowed to have non-citizens voting. It's only a matter of time before they move to illegal immigrants to vote. The left is doing everything they can to prop up their power at the expense of law-abiding American citizens. I mean, the data is there. This isn't a conspiracy theory. They want these people to come in. You know, if immigrants, just ask yourself a question. If immigrants, illegal immigrants, came into this country and they were wearing MAGA hats, do you really think that the Democrats would be supporting a mass wave of illegal immigration? I mean, if the illegal immigrants coming into this country were large-breasted blonde women, do you think the feminists of America would be out there in their cars blocking ICE agents from deporting the immigrants? Of course not. They would be the first ones to round them up and send them back. You get rid of those blonde women. You get rid of those blonde women, say the feminists. No, but I mean, these people, they come in and they're coming from these countries in Central and South America. They're illegal aliens. They want social welfare programs in the United States. They're not here to assimilate. They're here to get on social welfare or find some jobs to send money home or use social welfare dollars to send money home. And the Democrats are like, let's turn them into our voters. If the illegal immigrants in this country were coming here and they supported conservatives, the Democrats would be forming a human chain on our southern border to keep them out of the country. You know it and I know it. And for those of you who say people on the right are opposed because, well, they are coming here to vote, they would support Democrat. Yeah, to a degree, you're absolutely right. But also you're conceding the point that this is a power play by the Democrats. It has nothing to do with the rule of law. It has nothing to do with respect for the law. It has nothing to do with respect for our sovereign borders. It has everything to do with the accumulation and protection of democratic power. And to the extent Republicans can deport as many people as possible, do it. But, however, Tom Holman pointed out the other day, I don't have the audio, that the most we've been able to deport rapidly in this country during the first Trump administration was 700,000. We may be getting over 1 million this time, but there are 12 million people here. It's a slow process, and the Republicans have got to dot the I's and cross the T's and follow the law. To the extent you steamroll through, you're turning voters off by looking like you're defying the law. You got to go slow. Just keep them from getting citizenship so they can't vote and keep deporting them slowly over time. Hello there. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number is 877-973-7425, except it is too late. Too late for you to call in. You had the opportunity. You remember the biolab in California? It was raided by the police in California. It was stumbled upon by someone. They called the police. The FBI showed up, and they had Ebola and COVID and HIV and malaria. Well, police and the FBI searched a home in Las Vegas on Saturday, finding a possible biological laboratory that included refrigerators with vials containing unknown liquids. Shortly before 6 a.m., The Los Angeles SWAT team served a search warrant at the home, and they found a possible bioweapons lab. A second location was also searched. No lab was located there. An LLC tied to the Holmes County records matched the name of a company. That's also part of the case in California with that bioweapons lab, where in that case, the Chinese citizens face federal charges for manufacturing and distributing misbranded medical devices. As part of the investigation, local and federal officials raided the biolab in Reedley, California, and Fresno County. Inside the Reedley Biolab, officials observed blood, tissue, and other bodily fluid samples and serums and thousands of vials of unlabeled fluids and suspected biological material, raising the concern that they contained pathogens. Investigators also located pathogen-labeled containers such as dengue fever, HIV, and malaria, along with 1,000 mice. And now it's happened in Las Vegas. And the common tie in all of these is the Chinese. The Chinese are operating biolabs inside the United States. In this particular lab in California, they had bags that were labeled for amphetamine and THC and meth and MDMA, Molly and cocaine. They had Ebola, they had HIV, they had dengue fever, they had malaria, they had COVID. They're finding the same stuff here in Nevada. The Chinese are in this country, and they are doing things we should not allow them to do. They are not our friends, and we should stop treating the Chinese as a friendly government. They want to conquer us. We should not make it easy for them, at least. Swiss America has been warning you. Xi Jinping now wants the Chinese to be a reserve currency. And Swiss America has been warning people about how the Chinese are trying to steer people away from the dollar. That's one of the reasons gold prices went up, is the Chinese were at least pushing countries to trade in gold and silver. Those prices are starting to come back down now with some more clarity about the Fed. But the whole thing is just seemed out of kilter, out of whack. And Swiss America would love to educate you, to help you with your retirement and finances. They send you their report, The Secret War on Cash. If you call or text 800-289-2646, just tell them Eric sent you. Text my name, Eric, to 800-289-2646. That's 800-289-2646. You should also look up on YouTube, Swiss America Trading, their podcast platform on YouTube, does a lot of education about these global currency issues, the BRIC nations and trading, and the secret war on cash. And get their report for free. You can also go to SwissAmerica.com/Eric, SwissAmerica.com/ERICK. Message and data rates may apply.